last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. It's okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
what's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Well, hello there, listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, wellness coach and well-being expert, Darlene Marshall, joined by my trusty sidekick, Princess. And we've done a few episodes over the last few years about GLP-1 weight loss medications. And, you know, I'm not shy about many things, and I definitely haven't been shy about my own skepticism, wanting to wait while the jury was out, and we gained a bit more information about the nature of these medications, their effects on us physiologically, because there were so many claims coming out when these medications were first hitting the market. And I remember last summer being like, man, there is a lot of people doubling down. Well, it turns out over these last few years, we found a bit more is going on under the surface than we originally considered. And just like anything else in life, I'm not interested in some kind of straight up good, bad value judgment binary. Oftentimes on this show, what we're invested in is diving into the nuance, because it's in the nuance when we get this deeper information about what we know, what we don't know, what's going on with each of us individually. We can make good decisions. Better information allows us to make better decisions about what's going to work for you in your life. Sorry for the stumbles. A furry someone is digging their nose into my hip and it's distracting me a little bit. But you don't have to take my word for it on any of this, because that's why we have guests on this show. And our guest today is the Associate Chair in the Department of Kinesiology at CSU Dominguez Hills in Carson, California. He's the owner of Sports Physio RX and has contributed extensively to NASM coursework materials, including some stuff that's coming up this summer that I'm really excited for it to come out for all of us to learn from the brilliant, the learned, and the knowledgeable Dr. Scott Cheatham. Welcome to your first time on Better Than Fine, which is crazy.
Yes. Finally, I love it. Yes. Thank you so much. Hi, NASM family. How's everyone doing? I'm so happy to be here and to be hanging out with my friend Darlene, and also talking about a very hot topic, the GLP-1 medications and lifestyle. And so hopefully over this next, time we're together, we'll hopefully, cover some of these hot topics. So.
And I'm so excited to just get to talk with you again. We've only gotten to meet this at one time that we're aware of. I'll throw this out that we're aware of, because we've had a lot of overlap in at least my time in the business. You've been in the business longer than me. But that one conversation that we had over dinner in Phoenix earlier this year, I was blown away just how fun it is to nerd out with you. And so I'm really excited for this conversation personally, and also for, of course, our listeners.
Yeah, me too. And again, it's all in the spirit of helping people, right? I mean, I think that's the essence is, with all of our NASM family, our primary goal is to really empower our patients, right? Or in some people in their clients, right? So, those of us who see patients as healthcare providers who are in the NASM family, or even, our fit pros and our wellness coaches, impacting clients' lives is so important. And so to me, this is a very important topic, because I have a lot of clients when I'm doing my fitness coaching. And then I also, as a physical therapist, I have a lot of patients who are on these medications. So.
Yeah. And I'll also throw out, we've got a fair slice. I feel very lucky that such a significant portion of the audience of Better Than Fine is people who listen to the show for this information for themselves. So it's not only for practitioners, but also people just making informed decisions for their own health and well-being. And so let's just start with, do we know everything that you think we need to know, or that social media and marketing is trying to tell us that we know about GLP-1 weight loss medications, is the jury all the way in?
No, I mean, I would say
No.
that that's a hard no. I mean, we're still learning a lot. I mean, we're in the infancy still, in my humble opinion. And I've done some academic research and some presentations, and I've helped with some of the NASM material when it covers the GLP-1 medications, the evidence-based reviews. And when you dive into the research, we're just getting to know how amazing these medications are, and also how to approach them. So I think everybody from our NASM family, we have to realize that when we have our clients or our patients who are on these medications, we are still learning their overall physiological effects, and we're still learning the long-term efficacy of these medications. And so the jury isn't out yet, because we're on actually our third generation of these medications being created. They've actually been around for a good 20 years and been studied through the FDA trials. And so one thing I think our family needs to consider, our NASM family, is that we're in our third generation, and we're still seeing the positive effects that we can see overall, but we're still learning how to really manage them, when it comes to, how long do we take them? What are the side effects that come with these newer medications? Because remember, we have new versions coming out all the time, right? There's new versions, also dosing, titrating, how much, what is the optimal, amount a person should take? How does that affect them? How does that affect their diet? How does that affect their wellness and their well-being? So these are kind of the hot topics that are still under study, because we're just learning about it. So if you follow the research, we're seeing studies coming out almost monthly on these GLP-1s and the newer, what we call GLP-1 dual agonist medications that have a stronger effect. So we're seeing more and more research coming out. So we shouldn't rely on social media. We shouldn't rely on influencers.
Step one.
Yep. I mean,
Step
to be
one.
honest, yeah, we have to really look to our medical community, and really work with, even professionals. I work with some orthopedic surgeons. I work with some general medical doctors in my area, and we're always asking questions back and forth. So I think for the wellness coach, the fitness professional, we have to really kind of consider our scope of practice with these medications, but we also got to monitor our clients, because I have some clients that have been on it and they've had a lot of adverse reactions from the side effects. And so and I'm sure some of the family out there will agree, I refer them back to their medical doctor, and the doctor changed their dosage, and it was better. I've had some doctors change complete medications. They went from the newer Z-Pound and they went to Ozempic. They totally switched it. And one of my patients was very interesting. They were taking it before surgery. So
before
right.
gastric bypass?
No, they were going to get an orthopedic surgery.
Oh, okay.
And this is 2 weeks ago.
Rehab.
Yeah. So the orthopedic surgeon said, I want you off of it because I don't want you to lose muscle mass before the surgery. Because if you lose too much muscle after surgery, it's going to be even harder to rehab a total knee replacement. So I was just like, so it was very surprising. So just, these are kind of fun stories, but to go back and focus on your question, we're seeing a lot of themes, and we're seeing a lot of different approaches to the medications. But I think all in all, the medical community, as well as the consumer, we're still wrapping our heads around this topic.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me quickly summarize for our listener, because I think there were a lot of gems in there, right? Yeah. There was big one that comes up on the show all the time, which is maybe don't get your health and well-being information straight from an underqualified influencer. Partly because, and you called this in with your anecdotes. I've got a few anecdotes of my own where that influencer doesn't understand the nuances of all of the factors that go into making our health decisions. And whereas an influencer who's being paid to push a particular medication and espouse all of its virtues, they're probably not going to consider something like losing lean mass before an orthopedic surgery that requires strength in order to properly rehab it. right? And instead, turning to your healthcare provider and letting them help you make these good decisions. And also, like you said, the jury is still out on a lot of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I miss any of the big ones you wanted to highlight?
No, I think that's great. And I think it's, and I think those examples will hopefully resonate with our NASM family, because those are just examples of what I've experienced in my world, right? And
Mhm.
I'm sure, gosh, I'm sure if we surveyed a lot of our family who's listening to this, they probably have some great stories themselves of, dealing with the popularities of these medications,
Yeah, and the conversations around them, right, that we're all having.
Mhm.
I think the other thing that you said that I really want to pull out there is around scope of practice, because while something like, I've had some clients who've taken it and some to incredible result and some to less so. And what became obvious to me pretty early in those conversations was, yes, their medical provider was talking about the medication side of it, but what I was able to provide as their wellness coach and their personal trainer was around the lifestyle side, which is why when you said you wanted to do this, I was like, yes, definitely. That is the topic. The hot topic to me is, what are the lifestyle things that any of us should be considering, whether we're talking about as a practitioner, an individual, a person that wants to stay informed. So that's the heart of what we're here, of course, to talk about today. You're listening to the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Marshall. My guest is Dr. Scott Cheatham, and we're here to talk about GLP-1 weight loss medication and lifestyle. So I feel like in the beginning, as these medications came out, and it was so obvious that some celebrities, some influencers, we were going to see this cultural tide, right, toward a big push for weight loss, which I noticed during the pandemic, kind of a reset button where there was a lot more around, listen to yourself, take good care of yourself, and your body's going to hit a stasis that works for you and your medical provider. And now it seems like everything is about get smaller, get smaller, get smaller. And the messaging was, these medications are safe, just take them and you'll be great. And now the conversation has evolved. Where do you feel like we have evolved into? Because it feels like a very different conversation than a year ago.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because when we look at the messaging in the beginning, you're right. It's like, oh my God, there's this new, game-changing medication that's going to, change your life. You're going to drop, 3 or 4 pant sizes, and then you're going to, all of a sudden, within a little bit of time, you're going to lose all this weight. But one thing I don't think that the the whole world kind of realized, the medical community as well as the consumer, is that there are different factors that you need to consider when you are taking a medication. There are high responders and low responders, right? So I think we're starting to see that there are some people, like at least in my world and the research I've done and all the medical community that I interact with, there's some people who just take these medications because they're in the industry or they want to take it for cosmetic weight loss. They're high responders. They're already working out. They have a good behavior patterns, right? Their wellness is pretty decent, and they just take the medication for a temporal period of time, and then they just get off of it and they're fine. And then there's some that take it because they may have a comorbidity like type 2 diabetes, but they have a stronger side effects. We know that 50% or more, suffer with that, gastrointestinal nausea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they also have the GI issues. So, we're seeing this. So again, I think one of the biggest progressions we've made in our understanding of the GLP-1s from a year ago is really kind of softly classifying individuals based on their needs as responders of this medication. So we're finding out that a lot of the doctors who are prescribing these weight loss programs based upon the GLP-1 medications do 2 key things that have evolved this last year. Is they'll start with the low dosage, and then they'll titrate up, and then they'll monitor the client's responses. But then on top of that, we're finally coming around to what your specialty is. And what we're talking about is they're starting to promote more lifestyle modifications that should complement the medications. And so that, to me, those are the two biggest areas that, in a nutshell, that we've seen progressed and that has changed in the messaging over this past year. So,
yeah, and that progression messaging has been very heartening to me. I'm going to toot my own horn for a second that we were doing episodes, I think about a year ago, about weight loss medication and the loss of lean mass and what that would be predictive of, just based off of what, as personal trainers, we know in the fitness industry, when you have a client experiencing rapid weight loss, they're going to be losing lean mass. And that is metabolically active tissue, that is structural tissue, that is healthy tissue. I confess that I am not super current about the data on that. Do we have an updated sense of how much lean mass is lost with, let's say we've got your standard American isn't necessarily attending well to their wellness and their health, right? We look at the comorbidities and the prevalence of chronic illness in our country. Let's say that person gets on a GLP-1 medication. What kind, if they're not resistance training, if they're not trying to build lean mass, what kind of loss are we looking at currently in the data? Do you have a sense of that?
Unfortunately, right now there is trials going on that are really starting to look at lifestyle. This last year, since we did the GLP-1 updates, we're finding that we're not getting so much data saying, okay, if someone takes the medication, they're going to lose an average percentage of lean muscle mass, right, in their kind of their core area, the appendicular or the, skeletal spinal area, right? So that's one thing that they've looked at is, how much loss is going to be in the arms and the legs as well as in our trunk. But unfortunately, they're only noting that there's losses, and there really hasn't been a clear consensus on an average percentage. But the key thing that I want to bring up is what they're starting to note in several studies that have came out is that the loss of lean muscle mass is an issue. It's a concern among the prescribing medical community, right? We're talking medical doctors, right? And it makes sense, but also too, that it's very similar to like these crash diets that you just alluded to, but also too, if anybody loses total body mass through dieting, there is going to be a loss of lean muscle mass. It happens naturally. But with the GLP-1s, because it turns off, just plainly speaking, it turns off the brain and the gut, it's a more rapid loss of lean muscle. And so that's the concern, is that a couple experts who've done the original Ozempic studies, they actually came out with a clinical commentary, which is kind of like a narrative review. And they had a very clear message in there that it's actually the dieting that's causing the most concern and not the effects of the medication. Because again, you're just doing an injection or you're taking an oral pill, and it simply just turns off the cravings, basically simply talking. But it's the dietary behavior patterns that is going to be the most concerning, because as you know, as well as I'm sure our family knows, you have to increase your protein intake in order to spare the lean muscle. And so that's been to me, that's been one of the biggest admissions that we've seen in the research. Now, though, we have several trials going on where they're actually studying lifestyle intervention more critically than what's been documented in the original FDA studies, right?
Which is so heartening.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I find that very heartening. And I also think, like, if there's so much noise out there right now being critical of just science and the scientific method and our current narrative in science. And of course, probably listeners to this show are going to be frustrated like that. Like probably you and I would imagine both are. And I think this evolving conversation is such a great example of how science really works, right? Like, here's 20 years of a body of evidence of this compound being used, these medications being used to help manage diabetes. Then we see a correlation between diabetes outcomes and weight management oh yes, we can cross label use of this drug, roll it out. Oh wait, we're observing something in the population that maybe is not a good outcome. And again, I'm just going to like shout out to all the fitness professionals who went, wait. We've got decades that we can point to where when people crash diet and they lose weight this fast, we get negative outcomes. Are you sure this is good? Oh, wait, no. Lifestyle is going to be a factor. And now we're looking into that because this is how science actually works. We don't come to the table with all the answers. We try to find better questions. And I just want to call that in as like, what a great example of the way that we can use science along with common sense to help people live well.
Yeah, and also too, and I think it's important for our NASM family to kind of put this in context. The medication works upon the GLP-1 and the GIP receptors. There's receptors in the central nervous system, in the brain, as well as in the gut. But researchers are finding out that this medication they're exploring it, may have positive effects on everything from addiction because of the brain connection, as well as reducing other cardiometabolic factors, and to work on overall health. So to what you're saying, in the light of scientific discovery, we're seeing that the original medication that was meant to treat type 2 diabetes, it has a huge utilitarian effect on many different things. And so I think we have to embrace it and not so much poo-poo it and be kind of negative. But we also have to go, but as we embrace this new science, like you said, and the scientific method and how we're learning, we can't forget one key thing, right, Darlene, is that the success of all the GLP-1s was because the medication was combined with the lifestyle modification program.
Amen. Amen to that.
The key thing.
Yeah.
And who is most qualified to coach, educate, and guide our customers and our clients? Wellness and fitness professionals.
Amen. Lifestyle practitioners.
Drop the mic.
Dropping the mic. Right. Well, you know that this is one of my like soapboxes, that we are lifestyle professionals, and our role is to build well-being. We are the carrier pigeon for well-being in our clients' lives, because you go to the doctor when something's wrong. You come to us when you want to learn how to feel good, right? And how to live well. But that's not what this episode is about. You're listening to the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Marshall. Our guest is Dr. Scott Cheatham, and we are talking about GLP-1 weight loss medications and lifestyle. So let's get into the lifestyle piece. What are the things that you are telling your clients? And I'm partly going to be taking notes on like, okay, I know what I've been telling my clients, but I'm hoping they're the samesies.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I mean, even in my world in Southern California, a lot of my clients, they're working with the doctor on a, formal weight loss program. And we know that a lot of these medications are more at the concierge level, right? It's cash based. And so one of the first things that I do educate my clients on, and this could be my patients or my clients, I do tell them to make sure that they are getting their GLP-1, GIP medications from the manufacturer themselves. Okay. So one of the big one of the big concerns is the compounding and the quality. Okay. And so
can you explain that for our listeners who don't know what we're talking about?
Yeah. So there's really two different camps. Back about 2 or 3 years ago, when the GLP-1s hit the market and they were spread all over social media and it went viral, it became really popular. So a lot of people went to their doctors and they purchased it either cash or through insurance at the time. So the availability dropped. And so the FDA allowed a little clause that pharmacists could actually make it by hand, and they call it compounding pharmacy. So it wasn't made specifically in the manufacturer from the lab, but it was made using the same ingredients by a pharmacist with from a third party company. And so the problem is with that is with the compounding, they're not using the pure substances that the manufacturer would. So when you're compounding these GLP-1s, GIPs, we've seen lesser effects being reported to the FDA.
Oh,
The FDA has reported more severe side effects. They've reported more adverse reactions because you're basically, have a pharmacist who's basically a chemist, and they're just making it almost like, you're making a 7-layer bean dip.
like Breaking Bad,
Right?
but it's about
Yeah.
weight loss.
Exactly. Right. But I don't know if all the compounding pharmacies have a motorhome,
Fair.
yeah, I'm kidding,
Yeah, or a Jesse.
yeah, they don't have Jesse, but yeah, so that's the big concern, is the purity of it, right? Is the purity of it. And so that's one of the first things that I do recommend, because some of these concierge, at least in my area, some of these concierge programs, it's a couple $1,000s a month.
Yeah.
These programs are expensive. So if they're going to spend the money, I'm like, you need to get the real stuff. So the FDA has several websites. If any of our NASM family is interested, the FDA has really good websites. They can Google it. It'll come up. It'll actually show you what the real, the intramuscular pens are, and how to look for the quality of the real deal, and not some knockoffs from maybe another country or a unreputable source. So that's the first thing that I do educate my clients on. The second thing I do educate them on, and the doctors that refer them, I do know them, is in my world, I'll usually contact the physician, and they're pretty open to talk to me. I don't know if everyone's like that, but they know me in the area, and I talk to them about the hypocaloric diet. That would be the second thing. So first thing I discuss with my clients is the purity and the safety of it. So that's what we talk about. We also talk about, kind of embedded in that conversation. Yeah. So first thing, we talk about that. We also talk about general side effects, what to expect, because a lot of people are questioning, like my one patient who's on it, and they're exploring surgery. Then we talk about, hey, you're going to have to cycle off of it for about 3 months, because, surgery, you need the muscle. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we look at. Then step number 2 is we talk about the dieting, but we talk about that, you still want to get a very nutrient healthy, bioavailable, diet, but it should be grounded in heavier proteins. Like, we need a more protein based, because, there is a potential for more rapid lean muscle mass loss with these medications. So we want them to up their, their daily amount of protein every single day. Now, again, I'm a fitness professional. I've also have the wellness certification. I'm a physical therapist, but nutrition's not my specialty. So I refer them to a registered dietitian. After we get the guidelines from the medical doctor who is running their dietary program. So that's the second thing, is we talk about diet, protein, we talk about the research and what's safe from there. Then my third step in my process is that we also talk about the importance of resistance training, because we need to have a stimulus, right? So just think about it. We are having this, all of a sudden we just turned off all of our primitive hunger with this medication. We don't want to eat, but then we're telling people to work out. So we're trying to bring to the cognitive level, hey, look, you do need to have more protein throughout, but it's okay to have a little bit of a carbohydrate rich food before you work out, because you still need some energy, right? So we're telling people it's okay to cheat. Like, even you mentioned earlier, it's okay to have a nice, to have a piece of cake with your husband on his birthday or whatever, right?
So life.
Yeah, exactly. So we get into that. That's kind of our third step, is we talk about, the importance of resistance training as it overlaps with the protein intake and the healthy, I always kind of lean towards the Mediterranean style, right? That's more grounded in higher protein. And then with the registered dietitian, we'll do the calculations for the individual needs of the client. And then I leave the calculations to them, because, of course, I know them as a researcher, but that's not my field. And so the first thing I do is I refer them to them. They send them back to me. Then I do my fitness assessment with them. We go through everything. If they need physical therapy, if I need to do more advanced orthopedic stuff, I'll do that first. Then we'll put them into the OPT model, and then we'll start building with stabilization. So that's our standard program that we've done. So our last phase is going to be the implementation of the exercise. But then from there, our step 5 then is I set up every month we do a reassessment. We also send them for a DEXA scan that's in my area. So we'll do a body composition from there. And then from there, they're working with their medical doctor pretty much every 2 months now. We're seeing they're doing a 2-month follow-up with looking at the efficacy of the medication through their journey.
Yeah. I want to highlight 2 things that really stick out to me. One is to just celebrate something I'm observing as you're unpacking this yourself is this dual willingness to collaborate with other professionals. I think so often some lifestyle practitioners will get kind of territorial, like, oh, I don't want to lose the client, as opposed to they're going to value me that much more if I am a network facilitator, keeper, holder, right? If I'm willing to be the synthesis point for these other practitioners or help them make a good decision about who to work with. And the dual there being staying within your own scope of practice. Because as you said, you know this stuff. I'm sure you know plenty about good nutrition, but if it's not in your scope, why wouldn't you build a bridge with another practitioner and do great work together where you're both in your specialties? So I want to call that out and celebrate it because I think it's worth celebrating. The other thing I want to add is something that I've been doing with some of my clients who are considering GLP-1 weight loss medications, which is having them lean harder into their muscle building before they even go in to see the doctor. As soon as they get into their contemplation and they start asking me the questions, I encourage them to double down in their resistance training, because if they don't decide to take the medication, it's going to be helpful for them anyway. And if they do decide to take the medication, we've got that much more momentum in their metabolism and in their lean mass as they go into the potential to have that lean mass loss. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I just thought it's worth calling into the listener.
I think that's an important point is, that, the emphasis on, behavior change, right? And the emphasis on, prioritizing, the lifestyle is it takes time, because as you know, as well as I do, and our family does, every journey our client is going through, right? Each individual client, they're going to change behavior at their time, not ours. And so our job is to kind of be a tour guide, right? And so sometimes with my clients, I've been working with them for years, and they hear the same voice every week. So sometimes I have to change strategies and have them go see a registered dietitian, have them go see another professional within my network so that they can hear the same message I've been telling them. But because they're paying the registered dietitian, that message is amplified 100 times. But it's what I've been telling them for the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad to hear you say it happens to you, because I'm sure it happens to many of the coaches and trainers on the call, or even like as professionals, we tell something to our partner, and then our partner goes and hears it from someone they're paying, and you're like, I've been saying that for years. What are you doing?
I've been married for 30 years. I know. So the message.
It is okay. What matters is that the message got received. We don't have to be the transmitter, right?
Yes. And so sometimes I need to outsource because I'm hitting a wall, right?
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it if we do too, right? Like if it's happening to you, it's okay that it's happening to us.
Yes, exactly. And so another thing I do want to bring up that's important is, we talked about kind of the lifestyle axis, right? Which is, diet. We talked about the exercise with the medication. And so we could see that almost forms a triangle. But in the center of the triangle is really the patient or the client themselves. And so we always want to make sure, though, that we include the client in every conversation, and that we phrase it well enough to say, hey, I'm thinking that we should do this. What do you think? What are your thoughts? And have that active conversation and make sure that we're evidence informed, right? We're evidence informed when we talk to them, but we ultimately let them make the decision. And I think that that's a huge thing, because client-centered care, patient-centered care, we have a lot of, talented people in our family, our NASM family, wherever capacity you're at, the patient should always have the center and making the decisions. And I think that makes life a little bit better. Plus, they're going to feel like they're part of the process. So that's going to increase their reliability, and they're buying into the program that we're proposing.
Yeah, their agency, their self-efficacy, their belief that it is ultimately up to them, and they're not outsourcing it all to someone else, right? Their ownership of their path and their body.
Well, think about the downstream effects of such a positive conversation. You just empowered them. You just made them make the decision. You just made them feel like they're part of the process. And then on top of that, they feel like they're going to own it. And then it's going to make life so much easier. Yeah, for us as the coaches. But also too, I do want to bring back one thing, Darlene, that's important for just kind of in a nerdy way for our family out there who's listening to understand. One thing is the reason why the medical doctors are pushing the combination of the hypocaloric diet with the exercise, right? And the whole lifestyle behavior change is because they're trying to combat what is a newer diagnosis called GLP-1 related sarcopenia, muscle loss specifically for medications. And if some of our family out there have been following the longevity research, famous, other podcasters like yourself, very famous podcasters.
Very famous.
Like Peter Attia, right? And all them, they're really discussing, longevity is going to be built upon a foundation of resistance training, of good quality lean muscle mass. And so there's a big concern, and we've had some of our NASM leadership and family, they just got back from a GLP-1 conference, and they talked to us about it over this weekend because we're doing some stuff. And they were saying that that's been a big concern, is that they're getting this premature muscle loss in younger individuals, 30 to 50. And so down the road, when they're 60, 70, and 80, that's going to result into a lot of dysfunction, right? Their functional capacity is going to drop. That's going to lead to a whole cascade of comorbidities, adverse events. So we need to promote that. And so that's been something that I wanted to bring up.
And long-term listeners of Better Than Fine will recall that we were talking about that last summer as a concern. And that's something that needed to be seriously considered. And that's why I'm so excited to see the conversation evolve into this, what I think a far more effective place, where we love nuance, right? We're not saying it's good or it's bad. We're saying understand the choices that you're making and how you could make other choices to mitigate what might be a negative downstream effect if you do decide, you or your clients, to take one of these medications. I have one more thing I want to pick your brain on, because it's related to this, is something that I'm noticing. We've been talking on the show for about 2 years about ultra processed foods and, Nova Class 4 foods, to bring up to speed the listeners who haven't maybe listened to those backlog episodes. When a food has industrial ingredients and industrial processing is when we consider it to be ultra processed. And when those foods are a higher and higher proportion of your calories, we see worse and worse health outcomes, right? The more ultra processed food a person eats, we correlate that to worse and worse long-term health outcomes. There is some nuance that is currently lacking in the research. But Dr. Scott, one of the things that I am noticing when I walk through the grocery store is more and more ultra-processed foods who are celebrating themselves as a high-protein foods, and now even having like the brand name of the medication on the labels saying that these are good foods for you if you are on one of these medications. And it seems to me like a big marketing ploy where they just tweaked the formula for, I'm not going to say the curse word, but chemical something storms that then get slapped on a label as a food product. And I see it as kind of some exploitative marketing. So if you're someone who's trying to get higher protein in, or your clients are because you're taking one of these medications, but you're also trying to improve your food quality by lowering your ultra processed food intake, where do we square the circle in the navigation of all of this marketing and all of this influencer noise and the influencer pushing the supplements and the whole mess? Like, what do you encourage your clients to do?
I tell them to look away. I mean, just like, I'm like, look away that supplement, because I've had my patients who've saw on social, the different supplements that are being pushed, the ultra processed foods and stuff. I think we have to remember that, when we're chewing that In-N-Out hamburger, right, and we're savoring that double, the GLP-1s are activated once it hits our stomach and our GI. So it's a natural occurrence. So there is really, in my humble opinion, and in my appraisal of the current research and stuff, there really isn't any specific ultra processed foods or anything supplements out there that are going to all of a sudden, shut down all the GLP-1s and you're going to enhance things, right? So unfortunately, it's in that gray area of supplements where they can safely, or, I guess they can get away with having these soft kind of, claims, right? And these claims aren't 100% true as of yet. I haven't seen anything in the research. Now, I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, but thus far in the research, I've seen studies on this ultra processed food, these claims, and I haven't seen anything that is statistically significant or clinically meaningful that has come through, where a lot of these bigger healthcare associations have actually approved some type of supplement that would enhance the effects of the GLP-1s. Now, another concern that has been brought up by several general practitioner internist doctors that I work with is that some of these ultra processed kind of foods may actually, and this is what they're thinking on a clinical level, okay, we're not saying that it's true, but they may actually have an interaction effect with some of the medications, so that the person's eating a bunch of supplements that maybe their body doesn't need. So these are questions that are kind of coming out now. Again, I'm not saying that those claims are right or wrong, because I'm just saying that they haven't been proven yet. So I want to be careful. I want to be careful on that, and just saying, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying, so far we haven't had a consensus in the healthcare community to say, oh yeah, this brand of ultra processed food is ideal for someone on GLP-1. That has not been proven yet.
Yeah. And I even wonder if we might have an equal and opposite negative effect, where there is some correlation, assumption. We don't have a body of evidence yet, but those of us who are out here trying to use some common sense, it's like, okay, these ultra high protein, ultra processed foods, chemical explicative storms, their negative impact on the gut microbiome, and then that negative downstream effect on that person's health outcomes, is that when you come off the medication, or we see these, changes to lean mass, that we're seeding a different set of problems, and the baby's out with the bathwater now because we're so busy supplementing. Or I know a few people who, in the loss of appetite, their calories became liquid, alcohol and otherwise, right? And so we see these other seeding of negative health outcomes, even though somebody's weight is coming down. And of course, long-term listeners are going to recognize that this is always part of our weight loss conversation, is that it's not just about the number on the scale. It's about the quality of the tissue, the metabolic activity, and ultimately the well-being of the person. Because as you pointed out, in the middle of that triangle is a human being who we are responsible for helping to care for. And we want to be their well-being Sherpa, not just make some good pictures for Instagram for before and afters, and then it's ruined the rest of their life.
Yeah. And also to add what you're saying, and I think it's important for us to, as professionals, to conceptualize, is, one thing that's being explored, and this is kind of the last, hot topic that that I kind of, as I prepared for this talk to kind of think about, is that what about the post GLP-1 management.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that's important, is because I think our NASM family needs to realize that they're going to probably within their practice eventually are going to have some client who took it for cosmetic, lost their desired weight, maybe some lean muscle, and then once they got off of it, they may not have the best behavior patterns. They may not be able to maintain that lifestyle. So if we look at some of the studies, especially there's a landmark GLP-1 semaglutide study, they found within a year, a big portion of the original study, they gained back 2/3 of their body weight within 1 year because they didn't maintain that healthy lifestyle. So as we're talking about all these hot topics, I do want to encourage all of our family to kind of keep in the back of your mind, we also need to educate from day one the client on strategies to help maintain the lifestyle, even in the absence of the medication. And I think that's
what I
important.
heard in there, I just want to call this out for any trainers who are listening, or if you are a wellness coach that is listening, a subspecialty. We're always looking for, how do I differentiate myself in the industry? How do I differentiate myself on social media and in my content? And if you have a passion for something like this, being the expert who meets them in lifestyle when they come off the medication, that is going to be a huge market emerging in the next few years. And I think, Dr. Scott, you just seeded business ideas. And I hope some people really hear that, especially in person, right? If you are your local areas, your local markets, like, I'm coming off GLP-1s and I'm going to help these people build a long-term lifestyle of well-being when their body has rapidly changed, because there's also huge identity shifts after that. Like, I just heard the marketing business mindset just explode in my own head.
Yes, no, it's true. And that's what we're doing. We're doing that with my company, is because
Cool.
the medical
Cool.
doctors are too busy. They're dealing with all the
And they
seasonal
don't know
colds
we
right now.
know. They don't
They
know
do
we
not.
know.
No. And
They don't.
this weekend I had the pleasure of being with part of the scientific advisory board. We have some medical doctors on the board, and they're exercise specialists. They have master's degrees in exercise science, and they're very qualified. But there was a great conversation around how the medical community doesn't know exercise science, wellness, or fitness like our NASM family does. So to your point, this is a huge marketing tool to bridge the gap between GLP-1 and post GLP-1 life, right? So there's a gap right there, and it's an island that people should be taking it within their local community, because the clients that I work with, that I'm actively doing that 5-step program that I outlined, they're eating it up and they love it, because what am I doing is I'm empowering them to change their life permanently. I mean, it's nothing negative. Yeah.
You're also filling the gap where so many people are so overwhelmed with the fitness content, the wellness content, the social media, the content, and everybody's saying something else to try to differentiate themselves. And here you are with here's 5 simple things that are totally common sense. And also, thank you for sharing your 5 steps with us, because I think that is another exemplar as a leader in the industry, your willingness to be generous with your IP, because again, we get into this siloed thinking where we're unwilling to share, but then we're not able to as effectively help as a collective. And the other thing I want to call in as we're wrapping up is, you said this so many times, I love the framing of, we are an NASM family, right? We are a collective of people in a shared industry that is rapidly evolving right now. And at least from what I've experienced of this NASM family, I feel like you're my uncle now, Dr. Scott, my uncle in the NASM family.
Yeah, they call me Uncle Scott at the university. So.
Oh, that's great. Nice. Tapped into that. Well, my fitness uncle, that we are at NASM collectively trying to be a voice of consistency and reason and honesty about the scientific evidence, and also the common sense that couples with it, instead of just another influencer out there making content for the sake of what's got to get thrown up this week. And so thank you for being a voice of consistency and reason, and of a mutual love of both science and helping people.
Well, yeah, because I think it comes down to the love for our clients, right? It's centered by love, but it's also, grounded in the professionalism that we should bring to the industry, right? It should be that we're helping the whole person. We have to look at each of our clients as their own individual person with needs. They have their own unique needs. So I could give that 5-step problem and someone can go do it. With every single individual we work with, their journey is going to be different. So with some clients, for example, I might stick with the 150 minutes per week 2 times because they're couch potatoes. So I'm just going to use the USPAG. That's it. And then they might be more informed. I could bring up a study and say, look, it's published. The US government, great. Okay. Some clients, they need more. They need a little bit more of a lifestyle program on steroids per se, right? So I might just be like, you know what? I need you 3 days with me, 1 day a week in the gym yourself. And then we might give them a supercharged program because they're not getting to the goals that they want to get to. Right? Because remember, it's all patient or client driven. So again, the professionals should always think that these tips are great, but you gotta love and know your clients individually, because once you meet their individual needs and you connect with them, they're gonna stay with you for years. I've had patients for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And they're
with
my
a whole
fitness
person
client.
approach. Yeah, I'm at 13 years now, which, okay, as we wrap up, I have one personal thing to throw at you.
Sure.
I know that we both worked at Equinox,
Yes.
and it's just now come into my mind. Were you teaching Equinox Academy in 2012?
Yes, I was.
We
I was one
have
of the
met
old school.
before.
Oh,
You taught me in
Oh,
Equinox
good.
Academy the fall of 2012. Leo Troso convinced me to go to the Greenwich Ave location, but you were the other instructor, weren't you?
Yep. Yes, I was.
Oh my God. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden it just came out of the ether that I'm like, wait, you were the other instructor. I completely forgot until like 90 seconds ago. Well, let me take this opportunity to thank you, because I didn't think I could be successful as a personal trainer. I was a career trainer. I have a chronic illness. I came into fitness to try to mitigate my own symptoms. I genuinely didn't think I could do it. And it was instructors like you, including you, that fostered in me a recognition of how much I love science, that I could do this. And now I'm in my 13th year in the industry, on the show. Like, all of these things happened from somebody who never thought they belonged. And it was really you guys that convinced me I did.
Speaks a lot. Thank you. That speaks a lot, because, your love and what you've done, I followed you with your podcasts, and, the content you do for NASM is top notch. I took, the wellness certification myself, took it, passed it, did really well, soaked up all the information. So, we have to remember, I could be considered like an OG in the industry, but it doesn't matter. I'm learning every day. I learn from my patients. I learn from you all. But I do have one thing to disclose, one secret here. I've been in the industry a long time. Okay. Now, you were probably on your bike when I started as a kid. I'm kidding. But do you remember Family Fitness Center?
No, I grew up rural and very poor. So
okay.
No.
So Family Fitness Center is actually 24-hour fitness. So I worked at Family Fitness in the early years, where we called lats flies, and we had all these terms, and I'm going to throw a wheel, a quarter, a dime on. And, so I was in the total early years of the whole fitness trend. So it's been amazing to see, the evolution, right? And to see how people like you have been our next generation and stuff. Because again, I need to retire eventually. So I need you guys to take over, and I need all my younger NASM family out there. Let's get going, because I need to retire.
I never want to retire, Dr. Scott, but if you feel the need, you'll still be welcome back.
I got a good 10 or 15 left, so we'll be fine.
Amen to that. Maybe have far longer after to enjoy it. Where could our listeners find you and your work?
Okay, so I'm pretty old school, but if they Google me, they'll see a lot of my research come up. But I'm at California State University of Dominguez Hills in California. And also I have my own personal website that I pretty much use the most. It's drscottwcheatham.com. So those are the gangs. And then obviously I don't even remember my social media handles. I'm old school. So I had a flip phone. Okay. I had a Nokia flip phone.
Me too.
So,
I had a brick.
Yeah, I had a BlackBerry and I had a pager. So,
I
you
had
know,
a
that's
Palm
that.
Pilot.
I know exactly. So it's like, so I'm kind of old school, but yes, I'm on Insta and I'm on Snap and I'm on, you know, I got kids, you know, high school, college kids. So, you know, so I'm on all that so they can find me, but using my website or, you know, just an email. I mean, Cheatham at csudh.edu. That's my email, or just people want to reach out, and, you know, I'm pretty visible on social. So yeah, I mean, I'm
And
current. I teach online, and, you know, I'm very current and techie. I was a computer programmer in my previous life, so I get it, but I'm just, social media is growing on me. I love doing podcasts, you know, and stuff, but I'm just learning how to be smart with the Instagram, and I'm on TikTok now, you know, so I'm just learning. I'm like, it's like, you know, I don't know. I'm old.
I'm here for Dr. Scott, the TikTok influencer. I'm down for that mission.
I'm gonna try, but my son's teaching me how to do all the videos and stuff. It's amazing what you can do on TikTok.
Yeah, it is pretty
Oh,
cool.
man.
I buy it. And I'll just plug, I am also older than probably you realize, and I have been creating content on the internet since 1999. So
Oh, good for you.
I have long felt that the long form content gives us a lot more to chew on, because of course I care about nuance. So thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Scott, for sharing
You're
so
welcome.
generously with us, and for being such a good example of a practitioner that we can all aspire to be like. I appreciate you so
Yeah.
much.
And Darlene, thank you for the message that you give our family and the world out there, and the positivity, and how we approach wellness. And I think and again, I'm a big fan, and I learned from you. I learned from the course. So if anybody is really interested, you know, you got my full endorsement for the way you're teaching wellness, because that's the way it should be done. That's a standard, you know. And so thanks for everything you do, because you are an influencer and you're really helping us to go back to basics, and that's the love for our clients. So
Thanks. Thank you.
yeah.
I don't take compliments on the show well, so thanks.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Well, thank you, listener, for this and every episode of Better Than Fine that you enjoy and let into your life. If you have feedback for us, you can email me. It is info@darlene.coach. My Instagram is darlene.coach, and my website, wait for it, darlene.coach. You can also find me easily on LinkedIn. If you're a fan of the show, I hope you've already subscribed it. Share it, comment, you know what to do. You do it whenever you love something. And I hope that if you love Better Than Fine, you go off and do those things to help the show to grow. Of course, thank you so much. Take good care of yourselves and be well.